There was a few questions that I didn't answer that I said we would ask her. Remember, who did I say to write it down? Are you one? Okay, go ahead.
If you're managing your property yourself versus using a property management company, does that change your insurance? Like, do you still need to have landlord policy on your insurance for your rental?
Yeah, the question is, if you manage a property yourself versus having a property management company, would you still want landlord insurance?
When you're using the management company?
Yeah, so landlord, so are you talking about would we want the tenant to have insurance or me as the landlord?
Well, so you own the rental property,
Yep.
but if you're using the management company, do you still need the landlord
Yeah,
protection? through the
so
policy?
if you have a mortgage, so if you own a property free and clear, you don't have to have insurance, right? That'd be crazy, but you could do it. I know one investor that doesn't. It's like if God wants it to happen, it'll happen. Yeah. So if you have a mortgage, you have to have insurance. You'd want to change the property insurance from an owner-occupied property to a non-owner-occupied property. It actually makes your premium go down. Most people don't know that because it has less personal. But you would also want landlord rent loss insurance for 6 months. If you're getting a new mortgage, it's required anyway. But I would say it's not smart not to have it because I've had a fire. If you have a property management company manage it for you instead, I would make sure the property management company requires renters insurance for their renters or not use them. Okay, yes?
I do, by the way.
You do? What's your name again?
Tracy Worthington.
What's your phone number?
801.
801
655.
655
3700.
3700. Do you cover Salt Lake County?
I do.
Great. So what was your comment?
Renters.
Was that a good plug?
Yes.
Okay,
Awesome.
you're welcome.
I put a clause in the lease that I charge a $25 fee per month if they do not provide me with their certificate.
So then are you just covering it and paying it?
Most of the time they get it to me really fast.
Cool.
Because renter's insurance is $10, if not more, less than a $25.
Yeah. So she has a clause that they charge us $25 a month for it.
Because you'd be surprised. I have tenants who, well, I've had it since we moved in. Great.
Where is it?
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
Gotcha. Good. Thanks for sharing
It's
that.
leverage.
Good.
Tracy.
We had a few other questions. Anyone else have questions that I'm back on? Okay, I want to share one thing on insurance also. Subject to insurance, if you're going to get property subject to or an all-inclusive deed of trust or a contract for deed, there is a due on sale clause. You need to understand it before you close on it. We're not going to talk about it today. There's a class later. I'd encourage you guys to go to Sean Watkins' class with Slaria in 2 weeks. Here's what's cool. Anyone who owns a lot of properties or has done a lot of stuff, you can learn a lot from them based on their experiences. But if you're going to do subject to, you just need to make sure you know what type of the mortgage it is because there's ramifications if you don't disclose correctly. So it's just, as you'll notice, all these things are progressively, you're going to learn in life. With that, Steve Garrett, 5 tips for handling catastrophic events and disasters. Why I wanted to share this is in the last 12 months, I had a fire and a flood, 2 floods. One thing that we're doing on all the properties when we're renewing is we're putting hard wire smoke detectors in all the properties because it might cost us a couple $100, but it's going to save us thousands of dollars and potentially people's lives. So new construction, you got to have hardwire smoke detectors. We're throwing them in because it's good. Did anyone hear about the family in Idaho that passed away a month ago from carbon monoxide? Anyone know about that? Cool. It's my client's sister and their family. So it's really sad. I helped them buy a house like a month before, and I helped their parents. So we're investigating getting economical CO detectors so we can throw them in homes because we just don't want that. It's just good to have good practices at its current code right now. So with that, one of my best friends, Riley Rattlesnake Rogers, who couldn't wake up today, his house burned down to the ground. I saw it burn down because we went to the BYU Utah game that night. So his house burned down to the ground. One of my good friends, Cam, his rental property burned 2 weeks ago in Kearns. One of my friends' name's Justin Puchar. He's had one property burned down to the ground. He was lapsed with force coverage, so doesn't have insurance on it. He had a rental property in Provo, catch a third on fire, and I know a bunch of floods. The reason why I'm bringing this up is I know none of the tenants had renter's insurance. So what happens to where they live? It's not our responsibility. So it's just good, like if you could take one thing away, just like we want to have people that can at least afford $8 to $12 a month to insure themselves. If they can't self-insure themselves, we're probably not interested in renting. It's not like we're in Detroit, Michigan. Okay? So, I'm going to share 5 tips, Steve Garrett, on how to handle these catastrophic events. Let's give a round of applause for Steve Garrett.
Thanks for this opportunity. I got some tips I hope and I think that you guys will find interesting. Okay, this goes along with what we were talking about already with your insurance. Does anybody in here own a condo? Okay, please, I beg you, go and talk to your insurance agent and make sure this property is properly insured. The state passed a law that changed the nature and the way that these condos are covered. The organization, the condo group, the HOA, they can have deductibles as high as $10,000. In fact, one I'm working on right now has a deductible of $10,000 on it. And if you're not properly insured on that, you could be exposed for having to pay that deductible before the HOA insurance kicks in. So please, make sure that's done right. A lot of insurance agents aren't really on top of it. You never hear from them. They don't call you. The policy's been enforced for years. You don't know. That's some big exposure for you, because this job I'm doing was a $27,000 job, and you just don't want that much exposure. Next thing is renter's insurance. We talked about that quite a bit. Renter's insurance, I believe, and I've heard this, that it has a clause in there that covers negligence that they could do to the property. And I think the deal we handled for Matt, the renter's insurance was able to cover the flood because they had that clause in their policy. So I would recommend partnering with an agent on this renter's insurance stuff. Cody would be great for that, and see what coverages there are in there. That's I'm going to start doing. That's one thing I learned here. It's a great tip. I like me being named as an insured also, as well as my tenants. Awesome stuff there. Okay, check outside drainage. And this picture kind of sucks being on here. But you say, okay, Steve, why do I need to check my drainage? We've had the property for years. We haven't had any problems. It's been okay. There's been no floods. Okay. Every year in late July and August, we have what's called the monsoon around here. Flash floods come in and affect isolated areas. An area 2 miles over might not get any rain, but it can utterly inundate that location. A property I inspected for Matt here last week, I go out there, and he's just bought the place, so it's not his fault.
Thank you.
But what they've done is they have a planter that has the downspout coming down into it, and it's filled with bark. And if this level here was the brick and the foundation, that whole planter is actually above the brick. And the downspout is draining into the planter area. That's a recipe for problems, and Trevor is on that, I know. But inspect stuff like that. Look for that. Make sure your downspouts are draining away from the house. Another time we can have problems with that is when there's snow, and we have a lot of melting. Sometimes the ground gets saturated with groundwater, and if that water doesn't have a chance to get away from the house, you'll just have water just seeping in, and you're like, what's going on? We don't know. I had a lady that had this happen a couple of years ago. She's lived in the house for 50 years, and all of a sudden she's got groundwater coming in. Well, that year we just happened to have a lot of melting snow, and the ground was saturated, and it caused a problem with that. Freeze check faucets. Okay. This is the style of faucet that is in almost anywhere around. This faucet here could be frozen and damaged and you not even know it right now. I guarantee you right now around the valley there's lots of these that are frozen. The reason why it can be frozen without you knowing it is because the faucet actually turns off back here. It turns off back here inside the pipe, back inside the house. This keeps it from freezing. So what happens is, while it's off, remember the valve's out here, you've got no problems. Everything's good. But whenever you kick this on, if there's a freeze break, anywhere in this section right here, as soon as you turn that on, it's going to go out. You're still going to get water coming out of the faucet, but you won't know that there's a split right here from freezing. So Trevor, come up here. Need your help for a second. I will show you guys how to check this yourself. And right now, my wife was planting flowers yesterday. So right now, like, we're going to start seeing damage from this. And I would check anybody that has properties. This is the check I would do. Okay, hold on to that. Okay, we're going to go up. We're going to hook a hose onto it just like normal. See if I can thread this. So I'm going to take the hose like this and kink it. And I'm going to come over here and turn that on. And I'm going to listen. Okay? I'm going to listen for the tone, any tone of the water. If I hear like a tone of the water, then I'm going to release that and I'm going to listen to see what the difference is. If I don't hear any difference, right here with it kinked, I'll hear water shooting out in here. If I let it go and then the tone of the water, you hear the tone of the water going through the pipe, you know you're okay. And I check it a couple of times like that just to double check and make sure. Heck, my neighbor down the street, I pulled up there to do some cleaning work for her. I hook up the faucet and I checked it and her faucet was negatory on the freeze check. And I was like, what? I go in, she's like, oh yeah, that's been broke for 2 years, we just haven't fixed it yet. Well, I could have just reflooded her whole place. I fix water damage, I don't cause it, hopefully. So, yes.
Can you just clarify that, how you check the sound difference again, please?
Okay, I know it sounds like kind of complicated, like what sound are you looking for? Okay, so whenever you squeeze it, you shouldn't hear any sound other than maybe some sound going through your kink. But if you kink that and hear water running, then you've got a problem. And I usually verify it. I usually kink it a couple times to make sure that I'm double checking myself. But that's a great one. In fact, I would check that. You got a question?
So what happens when you unkink it if there's a leak inside? Do you still hear the leak?
You probably won't, because water's coming out. You're still getting quite a bit of water out of there, but there's quite a bit of water going out the split in the pipe. So, okay, I've been wanting to say this forever. Matt Atkinson, write this down. Okay.
Trevor's got it.
Check heat during extreme cold nights. Well, what is an extreme cold night? Every night in January and December feels cold. Every night. Okay, this is what I want you to write down. Matt. Okay. And I've done some research on this myself, so I know what to expect, how to prepare my business. Because when this happens, it triggers in the industry what we call a flood run. We get a deluge of business. When the average between the high temperature and the low temperature for the day ends up in single digits. So we have a 0 degrees low, 19 degrees for the high. You average those together, you come up with less than 10. For each day that happens, your risk of water damage from freezing goes up. We get one of those days, you get a little bit of risk. 2 of those days in a row, your risk goes up even more. 3 days in a row, that's what it really takes to trigger the flood run, as we call it. So look for those conditions. What can happen is your renter wants to save on electric, and this happened in one of my rentals. Fortunately, we had PEX pipe and it didn't hurt anything there, but what happened is they wanted to save money on utilities. So there was a room in the basement that they cut the heat off to. This caused an outside line. It actually was the line that connected to the whole house, frozen. We're wondering, like, well, they're like, we don't have any water. We don't know. And I go there, the water meter's fine. I call the city. They're like, we haven't done anything. What happened is that froze because they cut the heat off to that room. So pay special attention to those days when we have those single-digit averages between low to high.
Can I repeat what you said?
Yes, because
See,
I'm
I'll
not
give it-
always the clearest and best expressive. I would love it.
Okay, so if the average temperature at night is less than
Oh,
10, and the
average
average,
between the low
the
and
average
high.
of the, okay, so if a night's 0 and during the day the high is 20,
Yeah.
you take it, divide it by 2, and if it's less than 10, then you're concerned. The more how many days frequent it is, the more concerned you are. After 3 days, it's a big deal.
So you're
Yes.
concerned, but what do you do about that concern?
Okay,
Good.
make sure that there isn't, your tenants don't have heat cut off in rooms in the basement. With exterior walls, it sometimes would be a good idea, if you feel this is an older home with insulation lacking, to go just turn the faucet on just a teeny bit. Doesn't hurt anything.
Especially on homes you're flipping, we have water running all
Yes.
the time. And
Yes.
turn on the range, actually.
Okay. Okay,
Open your cupboards, that's a tip, so the heat from the inside of the house goes inside where your cupboards are.
From the walls.
Yep. Okay, install smoke alarms. You know, I'm not an attorney, but if there was, our society is really what I call a litigious society. People are looking to sue. It could be a liability, I would imagine, and our attorney friend might be able to tell us more, but I would think if you were negligent on putting or making sure the smoke detectors are working, that's the other thing I would do, is make sure they're working. You could actually be liable, I don't know, maybe to any injury to that. And it's just the right thing to do for keeping your property, you know, in order and making sure things are going to turn out right for you. So the other thing was washing machine hoses, so the supply hoses. These are the ones that run in the back. I would replace those every 4 years. So keep track of that. That'd be a good thing to do whenever your tenants turn over, to replace those supply hoses.
What's been your experience with the leak detecting hoses? You know, the ones that are supposed to supposedly not leak or shut somehow. I have no idea what that actually means.
You know, I'm not familiar with what you're saying. I do know that they sell some washing machine hoses that are steel braid. You know, have you seen the stainless braided ones? I have seen those break too, so they're not foolproof. Go ahead.
I had a washer dryer installed from Sears, and I said I wanted the braided ones. And the braided is just over the rubber. He said it's it doesn't mean anything. He says you're
So
wasting
and that's probably why I've seen, because they were probably newer hoses, and I haven't seen, just because they're newer, probably haven't seen the older ones out. So yeah, years from now, we're probably going to see braided hoses
and they're
blowing out.
$25.
So they
Okay.
can
Those too.
still
For a lot more money.
Yeah. Okay, I know what question you're going to ask. Okay, we also do crime scene cleanup. I have a partner for that. And what we've determined on that is, and you guys are most of you, I'm sure all of you guys are property owners, or almost all of you are. We found that property ownership decreases your risk of suicide exponentially. You're unlikely to kill yourself if you own property. I would say that's a huge thing. And so, as a result, you're involved with people who don't own property. So you need to know that this is a possibility. Yes, Jess?
One more thing, Steve. I think it's important that if anyone does have a water damage, make sure it's dealt with the right way. Get a professional to get it dried out completely, because if you don't, you're going to run into other
Mold.
issues that are going to be more expensive to fix. So You know, plus, you know, if you're insured right, you know, the insurance is gonna take care of it, minus your deductible, so.
And insurance covers the crime scene stuff too. So, yeah, I mean, we.
Quick question.
We laugh about that, and whenever we go out to jobs, we're just like, look, gosh, if you don't own property, you're likely to shoot yourself.
If you do have a need for your services, us as investors, we can choose anyone we want. Is that correct?
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Okay, so that's good for you guys to know.
So your insurance company will try to steer you a certain way. They can't retaliate on you. They can't raise your rates. They can't be mean to you. Once you just tell them this is who I want to use, they will leave you alone, and all will be well from that point.
Good. So here's what's nice with that. It's nice to have someone who owns rentals themselves, also can understand and work with you. With Steve, Steve helped us with the flood. What was the tenant's problem? He went in, got it dried out, and then we replaced it on our own because we chose to. He was okay with that. That was okay with us. So
yeah, most of you guys have construction contacts experience. What we can do is advise you on that to make sure you're fairly compensated from the insurance and any other advisory situation on that. We're not like, hey, you got it locked down and use us for all of it. We're flexible with like that. So.
Good. Thank you. Let's give a warm welcome for Steve. Thank you. Good. As we wrap up the meeting, quick question. If you learned your 3 objectives thus far, raise your hand. I actually want to see.
Hold on.
Oh, come on, Jane.
We gotta find them.
Okay, if you covered your 3 challenges at least, raise your hand. If we didn't let's do this. If we didn't hit your 3 objectives, raise your hand. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. 5. If we did not hit all 3, 6. I'd say I'm doing okay. If we did not hit all of your 3 challenges, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Nice. Hopefully we'll cover right now. In chatting with Jeff, I get the privilege to speak with Jeff every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. We have a standing appointment to go over lots of different things that mutually benefit both of us. As we were going over this, I said, Jeff, a lot of people don't know from a legal perspective how to do things differently from being a landlord. Like, everyone thinks, oh, I don't want to deal, or I only have to deal with an attorney when I'm getting sued. No, you're dealing with an attorney to help preventing being sued and setting things up correctly because they have different experiences than we do. And they've learned a lot from their clients' poor experiences. So what Jeff's going to do for the next 10 minutes, there's 10 big mistakes that he's going to do a follow-up seminar at another time when he can go over all the examples that he would like for you guys to learn. But I thought these would be good bullet points that you guys write down with different things, and then you can think about how you can apply it for yourself, okay? So let's give a warm welcome for Jeff Braylio.
Thanks. Okay, I will, because we only have a few minutes. We want to get you out here on time if possible, and I actually have my open house at 1 o'clock in Salt Lake, which you're all invited to. I will buy you a drink, feed you, and answer whatever questions you want.
How many drinks?
I've got a lot of wine, beer, water, and soda.
Can we drive home afterwards?
No tequila, sorry, Matt.
Okay.
Okay, and because we only have a few minutes, everyone knows, or most of you know, that I do a webinar on the first Wednesday of the month. The June webinar will be on landlording. So just kind of be aware of that. I'll cover this more in detail in an hour webinar in June, okay? Okay, non-incorporated and transfer title. You'd be really amazed how many clients I speak with that either don't have an LLC set up, or they set up the LLC and they didn't transfer title to the name of the property. And even more often, I find clients with series LLCs, which is a newer breed of LLC, that didn't title it correctly. They actually put title in the name of the LLC and not the individual series, which is a huge mistake. So make sure that your property is titled correctly, whether you're using just a standard LLC or a series LLC. I can certainly help you with that. Improper tenant screening. Matt's probably the tenant screener extraordinaire. And he talked a lot about how to screen and find good tenants. The better your tenants, the less likely you're going to have problems. Okay, and if Matt's biggest tip, but the one I wrote down and highlighted, make sure your tenants like you. Okay, if they like you, they're less likely to come after you for something. That is huge. Okay, check their identity, get all the proper documentation, check references. Actually, you know what? When I did my first rentals over 15 years ago, I didn't call references. I didn't verify. I was like, oh, you're fine. You look nice. Okay, and after a decade of being a landlord, I realized that that is not for me. I'm not a landlord. I hire it out now. So if you can't do this, you know, hire it out, but you can do this yourself. Check driver's license, social security cards, employment verification, check criminal and credit checks, criminal records and credit checks. Okay, how much do you pay for that, Matt?
$20.
$20, there you go. Cheap. Okay.
You charge it to them up front anyway.
Yeah, you charge it to the tenant in an application. Okay. Not knowing or understanding your lease agreement and the addendums to your advantage. There are a bazillion different leases out there floating around. I have them, Matt has them, the Utah Apartment Association has them. You can get them online. They all say something sort of different, but whatever lease agreement you're using, read it, actually read it, understand it. If there are things in there you don't know, you can give me a call. I'm happy to explain clauses to you, okay? But really, really understand, because that is a legal document binding you and the tenant. Both of you can sue on that contract. And if you breach those terms, you're just opening the door to liability and lawsuits. Okay?
So,
yeah.
Which version is the best?
Mine. There are certain clauses you definitely want in them. I'll cover that in June. But most, the Utah Apartment Association one is real good. Mine's good. And most of the ones that my clients see that bring to me are good lease agreements. It's just that as long as you understand the terms, then it's a good lease agreement. If you know what it's dictating, you're fine, because then you can be in compliance. If you don't know what it is, it doesn't matter how good the contract is. If you don't know what's in it, it's worthless. Okay, it's about knowledge. Not having all the documentation in your name. This is huge too. Most clients do not understand that everything, once you transfer title in the name of your LLC for your rental property and you self-manage, your LLC is the landlord. The name of the landlord is your LLC, period. That's who the landlord is. If you put on the lease agreements at the top, first paragraph, it always says, you know, name the tenants, name the landlord, the date of the agreement, you know, it's called the recitals. If you put your personal name on that landlord line, you just opened yourself up to a lawsuit as the landlord, not your LLC. So you've lost the protection of the LLC in the first place, okay? When you sign as the manager of your LLC. That's just a signature line. The name on the lease is your LLC. Your insurance, make sure your LLC and your LLC's named as an additional insured, okay? And you want both your personal name and your LLC done. Utilities, if you don't make your tenants get their own utilities, if you do the utilities, make sure the utilities are in the name of your LLC. Some cities won't allow it, but most, I think, in Utah pretty much do these days.
And that opens you up to.
Yeah. Letters of communication. Anytime you communicate with your tenants, make sure it's in writing and make sure it's in the name of the LLC. Use letterhead. If you do email, create a signature line. They're very simple to do. All email programs can do is create a signature line. You know, MJA Real Estate, Matt Atkinson Manager. Okay, so that you constantly are representing yourself as the LLC, not as an individual. Okay, and keep these. We'll talk about that in a second. Not requiring renter's insurance and naming you as an additional insured. We've covered that. Okay, got questions? Ask Cody. Not having a personal umbrella policy. Okay, again, talked about that. Ask Cody.
Thanks for deferring.
Yeah, you go. Not keeping minutes on issues or challenges, repairs, properties, and site visits. Okay, most of my clients really understand the importance of holding meetings for their companies for liability protection purposes. Okay, that is important. And I hold those meetings with them. And we actually discuss the issues of the LLC itself to maintain its integrity and its protection. However, you should also maintain minutes or a record book, just have a spiral-bound notebook that you keep with you in your car at all times. So when you're at the property, you can take notes. If you're having a conversation, face to face, you can take notes. Date it. Make sure you just keep all of it, because it's what you're doing is you're creating evidence in court that you are being a good landlord. Okay. Repairs to property. I wanted to talk a little bit about this. Notice. Okay, repairs and notice. It is huge. There are a few things that you are liable for, even if you don't have notice of the problem. Okay. One is slips, ice on a sidewalk, snow on a sidewalk, etc. You know that the property owner, by state law, is liable to clear the sidewalks. Okay. So if you have a rental property and it's snowing in the winter and you don't go and clear the sidewalks at a reasonable time, and someone slips and falls, you are liable for that. Okay. Even if your tenants didn't call up and say, "Hey, the sidewalk needs to be shoveled." Okay. That's because that's dictated by law. Other repairs, notice is important. Jane?
Can you put that in your contract that the tenant?
Sure, you can, and they're still going to sue you for it. Because state law creates that liability on the landowner. Yeah. Now that's a helpful thing to have in your lease agreements, because then you can say, well, they were supposed to do it, so they are also negligent. They are also partially at fault. So that's a good thing, but that it will not waive your liability. Okay?
So Matt, do you have your own crew do that, or do you hire that out, or do you do that, or do you?
Multi-units, yes. Single families, no. And I just wrote down add snow removal on all single-family residency leases. So we're going to put that language that they're responsible to do it themselves.
Right. Right.
Because you're building a case if you get.
Right.
Good
Anyone who's
work.
taken my asset protection or liability classes, it's all about building a case. The more information you have, the more documentation.
You're so good. I took your business law class in 2000.
I know, and he still remembers stuff from my business law class. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Don't hire. Yeah. Work with people smarter than you.
Okay. Real quick, the other issue is things that you're not liable for unless you have notice. Okay. These might be a railing that breaks off from the wall, or a deck, a track on the deck that's now disappeared and there's a hole in the deck. These sort of things that happen, okay, that you are not aware of. There is some liability just by the mere fact that you're the property owner. As a real estate investor, you just have to understand if you're going to own real estate, you're going to be liable for things. But the real liability and the big damages come when you are notified of that problem and you don't take care of it within a reasonable time. That's the standard. You have a reasonable amount of time to fix that issue. What is a reasonable amount of time? Whatever you can prove in court is reasonable. Yeah.
And having a property manager, you're paying to manage property, adds another layer of protection, right?
Let's talk about property managers. Tracy?
Yeah.
You're a property manager. What does your property management agreement state about liability? Yeah, you didn't want this question, did you? Because I've seen almost every property management agreement in the state.
Yeah. Basically that we're not liable.
That's right. Guess what? I'm still going to sue you.
Probably.
Right?
So for the
both
properties
property
where if there's a property manager,
Yeah.
they're going to sue them first and then come after you if there's
Well,
no property manager, right?
Well, if there's a property manager, they're gonna talk to the property manager because that's their contact, and the property management company say, we're not liable, here's the contact information of the owner. And they're gonna go right to you, okay? And then I, as your representative, I'm gonna countersue the property management company. Property management agreements, very typically, they say, we're not liable for anything unless it's gross negligence or intentional misconduct. Okay? Gross negligence and intentional misconduct are very, very high standards, which pretty much says, property management company, we're not liable for anything. Okay? It's not true. It's not going to hold up in court. There are still standards that they are subject to. And if they don't make repairs within a reasonable time, they could still be liable. Okay? Very similar to if you ever go skiing like snowboard, you read the back of the lift pass. It says, we are not liable for any injury that you might occur, happen to you on the slopes. Okay, it's not going to hold up in court. You can still sue snowboard. Okay, snowboard just hopes that you think you can't. Okay,
90% of people will follow it. It's like the rock.
Yeah, and most people don't.
Rock
Right.
falls and chips your car. They tell you 90%
Right.
believe it.
But there is a transference of liability using a property management company. So yes, they could be partially responsible with you, but that could take away some of the damages that you might have to pay. If you have a lot of rental properties, a great suggestion is create a separate property management company. Run all your property management through that. And in those agreements, you're going to create a property management agreement in between that property management company and you as the owner, your LLC as the owner. And that property management agreement isn't going to have the same standards. It's going to have a much lower standard. Because what you want is to sue the property management company because it owns no assets. Okay? So there's ways of doing that, working with third-party property management companies and your own property management company. Not keeping all communication with tenants in writing. Okay, again, very, very important, keep it in writing. Writing, however, is a two-edged sword. Okay? The more documentation you have, you could be proving yourself innocent or you could be proving yourself guilty. Okay? But you're here, which means you want to be a better landlord. Which means you're going to be one of the good ones, the good landlords out there that people want to rent from. Okay? So for you keeping written documentation, it's probably, if not certainly, going to be to your benefit. Okay? Things like notice of, keeping a journal. I was told on Monday, January 3rd, about a leaking faucet or broken railing, and then you called my handyman on January 4th. In the morning, handyman went out and repaired it on the 5th. Keep those records, because that's proving that you did what a reasonable landlord would do. You repaired it in a reasonable time, and you now have proof. Okay?
Jeff?
Yes,
What
right.
about recordings?
Like video, like voice recordings?
Yeah, phone recordings.
Yeah.
Phone conversations.
Yeah, record, yep.
Don't you have to disclose though?
Not in Utah.
If you guys record me, I'm suing you.
Okay, when you're having a dispute with a tenant, okay, if ever a tenant even hints at being injured on the property or having some damage, like their pet was injured, anytime any issue might come up with a tenant, stop talking immediately. Okay? Don't say another word. You can talk about rent, you can talk about other things. Do not talk about the issue. That's, hey, I understand that's really, I understand your issue. You'll need to talk to my lawyer and have him call your lawyer.
How specialized is that law? You want somebody that just deals with this, or?
Someone who is at least familiar. At this point, at least someone who's familiar with being a landlord or rental properties like that. Because at this point, you're not really in litigation. You're not. What I'm really saying is, I don't want you saying anything to the tenant.
Right.
Okay. Second tip on that is don't. If there's a problem with some work that's been done, and the client that this relates to is not here, thank goodness, but somebody else is, and he'll get this very quickly. If the damage or the injury results from some work that you did on the property, don't send your contractor to go take a look at it. Okay? If someone falls through a roof or falls through a floor, don't send the contractor that was supposed to repair it in the first place. Okay? They're not experienced of what they're supposed to say or not say. Again, you want no communication, refer them to your lawyer. Okay? You just don't know. You don't want to start admitting things that you don't want to admit.
To highlight how tenants can misunderstand things, we had an eviction last summer where the tenant left me a voicemail after we had sent the file to eviction. And in her voicemail, she said that she would pay on a certain day. She didn't do that. But because she had left the voicemail, when we went to the first hearing, she told the judge that I made an agreement with her by her leaving me just a voicemail. And of course, she didn't have any real evidence to back it up, but it cost us a week because the judge said, wait, you made an agreement? And she said, yes. And the judge gave her, basically he delayed the hearing for another 5 days for her to produce evidence of this fictitious agreement that she thought she made with me. So you have to be really careful even if you don't make an agreement with her or don't talk to them.
Okay. Just some events that I've seen happen to clients. Deck railing fall. Okay, there was a deck on the back of the house. The railing was loose, and a child fell off of it and sued the landowner. Okay, so that actually really happened. I think that's still pending right now. The first thing you really want to do, notice with the insurance, a good amount of this will be covered with insurance, which is why you should always have good insurance, okay? Some damages will exceed your insurance, and so that's why you want additional protections. That's a whole other topic. But another reason why you don't want to talk to tenants if an issue arises, also don't talk to their lawyer if they get a lawyer. Because the client came to me and said, oh yeah, I got a call from a lawyer or a letter from a lawyer, and they asked for my insurance declarations page. Okay?
You know your liability limits.
That's right. He's hunting. This lawyer is fishing for information to see if it's even worth suing. He wants to know how much insurance you got and what kind of insurance you have. Okay? You do not need to provide that.
Don't.
Yeah, don't. Yeah. Just because a lawyer asks for it does not mean that you're legally obligated to turn over. The only time you're legally obligated to turn over any information is under court order. Okay? If you use a property management company, another great thing with using a third-party property management company, when you go to your rental property, don't ever tell them you're the owner of the house. You're just a property manager working for the company, period. Okay? And if anybody asks, if the attorney calls you and says, oh yeah, I represent the tenants and it's owned by this LLC, who are the owners of the LLC? Don't tell them. Just say, oh, you're gonna have to call the property management's attorney. Okay? Always deflect. Do not say anything. Always deflect to somebody else. Pet eats rodent poison and dies. That actually happened. Well, no, the dog could die. Didn't die in this case. Okay? But potential issue. There are things that are on the property. There could be a rat poison in the back of the garage that you didn't know about. Okay? Their pet finds it because the pets will find it. Okay? Slips and fall on the icy sidewalk. That is currently in litigation or pending litigation. Water heat. This happened in Rose Park. Water heater explodes, shot through it was in the basement, shot through the floor, and shot through the roof. Whole house caught on fire. Tenants were relocated. The house was repaired. If anyone's interested, I can give you the address. It's really their house looks great now.
Is it for sale?
It's not. No.
Seller financing.
Yeah,
Sell.
But you know what's amazing is, who would think that this would happen to the water heater? It literally exploded and shot flames right up through the roof, and then caught the roof on fire, and like 7 alarm fire. All the the fire trucks were there, etc. Wow. Fire flood. This is really, really common, especially wireless. Wireless thing. It's always going to happen, and don't ask me why. Right? Insurance, catastrophic. Things always going to happen at
during
night.
the day, and he was in a shower.
He's taking a shower at like 2 o'clock.
Yeah, right in the shower, and his house caught on fire.
Yeah.
But these things always seem to happen at night, which also increases damages because people are asleep. Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. There are constant site visits. Go at least twice, preferably 4 times a year, to check on these things. Replace the batteries in the smoke detector every single year period, whether they need it or not. Just every January, replace all the batteries in your smoke detectors, that sort of thing. Okay, there's my contact information. Just some things got going on. I've got an open house today, so if you want some food and drink and want to see the new offices, you're up in Salt Lake by the Gateway. You've got the address, a little invitation there. I hope you show up. Got a class on May 17th. How many of you have an IRA? How many have a 401k? How many use those funds to invest in real estate? Only a couple of you. Okay. You can, for $1,000, you can open an IRA. Any of you. Most of you can also open up a 401k and start flipping properties or holding rental properties completely tax-free. I will teach you how to do that. How many have ever done a 1031 exchange? A couple of you. You can actually upgrade property from a single rental to a multi-unit. You can sell the property tax-free. I will teach you how to do that.
Tax deferred.
Tax deferred, yeah, better. Tax deferred through a 1031 exchange. Hard money loans. It's going to be a huge class. It's 4 hours long on May 17th. Lunch will be included. I've got other attorneys there co-teaching with me. It's going to be an amazing event. Right now, the early bird registration is only $200, but there's a code on your slip of paper that if you register today, there's $25 off. But that expires tonight at midnight. Run.
Is that last line a mistake, or is it really .xon?
No, I'm not a porn site. No, it's .com. So
it's not correct. No, it's not correct.
It is incorrect. Yes, it is .com, not .xon. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to answer them. And in June, we'll cover this more in detail.
Let's do a warm welcome for Jeff. Thank you. Okay, as we wrap up, I'm going to wrap up in 4 minutes. Here's some notes I wrote down that I confirmed to learn. Number one, you guys need to have the right insurance. Right? You gotta be properly insured. I would encourage you guys to review that annually, because as you build up your portfolio, your needs are different. Okay. Number two, I like having the eviction. I like using my eviction attorney's lease, because at the end of the day, he knows the eviction courts, because he's the one who's processing that paperwork. That's just my matter of opinion. The other thing I like, as you do site visits, remember they're your customers. I don't encourage you to go there monthly. That's way too much. You got too much spare time, unless you live in the property as a fourplex or duplex or triplex. I encourage you at least to go quarterly. Remember that at the end of the day, you're not living there. If the grass is a little too long, or if there's trash that you want to get picked up, it's not a big deal unless the city sends you a letter or if you feel it's a health and safety concern. So let people do their things. Sometimes when we're newer, we get a little overzealous. And then I wrote down, add snow removal on all single-family residencies as the tenant's responsibility. My wife is writing that down, that we're going to implement that on all addendums next week. So with that sharing, I wanted to do a couple, I asked some people to ask me some questions at the end in front of everyone. Does anyone remember if there had one left? Eric?
Roll up one.
Roll up. Good. Quick question. If we handled your 3 objectives, if we didn't answer those questions, raise your hands now. 1, 2, 3. That's it. That's 4. Gee, I can never satisfy you. Okay. If I didn't you want Trevor?
Yes.
Oh, he's negotiable. Oh. Okay.
You don't want to pay a markup.
Yeah, it's called wholesaling. Okay, if I didn't handle your 3 challenges, raise your hand. 1 person. Okay, go. What's your 1?
If damage is on the outside of a multiplex, you suspect what tenant is responsible, but they don't claim responsibility.
What type of damage is on the multiplex?
It's just citing damages.
So how would I do it?
No.
How do you know who's responsible if they don't fess up?
Ask the other 3 tenants.
Well.
Okay, so here's an example. If
I
there
was
was,
just wondering if you've had, I know you have multiplexes.
yeah, so let's say a kid tags the multiplex. That
Yeah.
Different example. So little Johnny, which we don't have a little Johnny to my knowledge, little Johnny puts, "I love the Raiders." Okay, spray paints it. Well, obviously, if he has Raider paraphernalia in his house, I'd be like, "Hey, did your son do this?" No. Okay. Do you happen to know who did this? No. I'd probably send a letter to all the tenants. Hey, these 4 tenants, we want to keep your property clean and safe. We saw that someone spray painted a "We Love the Raiders" on it. Could you please contact us to let us know who did this? Or could you let us prevent this happening in the future so you have a safe, comfortable place to be kept? I guarantee if we sent a letter like that, it probably wouldn't happen again. So that's probably how I would address it.
Ultimately, it's just out of your pocket.
Yeah.
Cody.
Or don't. Or if it was spray painted like that, just paint it. Or if there's major siding repairs, I probably wouldn't finish it unless it needs to be fixed.
Now, if it said "We Love Broncos," would you leave it?
No, because they got their butts kicked. Okay, rolling up. So did I answer everyone's challenge question then? So I think there's 3 objectives, which I'd say is good, and I got everyone's challenge. Okay, rolling up. This is the best part. Okay, I met with an investor 6 months ago. They own over 800 units. It's a lot more units than me. Okay. The dad is in his early 70s. I asked them, "How did you guys get started?" He's like, "Exactly what you're doing, Matt Atkinson. We bought single-family residencies, held them for 10 years, and then we rolled up to multi-units." I said, "Oh, okay, cool. How long did you do that?" "We did every 10 years. Because as you pay down your payment and as you depreciate it, your cost basis goes down every year." Does that make sense? If any of you own at least 1 rental and did your tax returns with a professional, you need to ask them how cost basis depreciation works, okay? So if you hypothetically own a property for 100 grand and it's depreciated over 27 and a half years, 27 and a half is probably like 3,300 a year. 3,300 a year times 10 is 33,000. 33,000 minus 100 gives you a cost basis of 67,000, not including the land value. For those of you that get it, that's good. For those of you that don't, it's good for you to learn next year, okay? So what I learned is these investors who own 800 doors, every 10 years they would just roll up and they would do 1031 exchanges. Right now, the key is how you buy, Dr. Brown. You want to buy with equity. When we get older and more experienced, then we don't want to pay tax. Does that make sense? So we want to buy with equity. For those of you, I teach for 2 free classes every single month, over and 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 over again, because that's how I buy houses. I always buy them under value. My first 10. Now I'm buying lots of different ways, but you want to buy right at the beginning. So as you roll up, as you go down to 66, and let's say your values only go up a conservative 3% a year off 100,000, you probably owe 130. Your ARV or appraised value is 130. You owe 66. How much equity do you have? 60K, right? What's the rate of return in equity? 0. Right, Jeff? Jeff, you're a math teacher?
Yes.
Okay, are you an expert at math?
Pretty good at it.
Pretty good at it, okay.
I followed everything you just said, because I just did it 2 days ago. So we did the land value, the house value, depreciating 27 and a half years, right on the button.
Thank you.
You're
I didn't even pass college at calculus.
You're
So,
really good.
Thank you. Simple things. So why I'm bringing this up is you have 66 grand in equity. A lot of newer investors think, well, I'm just going to hurry up and go pay those down. No, because as you build up your portfolio, and once you start paying a tax bracket at 39%, 39.6%, which I'm going to be excited once you guys hit it, which it's not awesome. But once you make that type of money, you don't want to pay tax, right? You want to defer it. So my goal in rolling up, Tyler, do you remember how many properties I would have at 75 if I rolled up in multiples of 4?
Just over 14,000.
Just over 14,000. Assets under management would be over $1 billion. So, not that I'm going to hit 14,000, but I might. My wife would be like, "What the hell are you doing?" Okay, look at her face right now. So the reason why I'm saying that, my goal is every 10 years I want to roll up at multiples of 4, so that I can own more units. This investor I met with that owned 800, they just own like 10 commercial properties now, 10 to 12. They own big commercial, they have awesome cash flow, and they're just building up. They've been owning properties for about 40 years.
What do you mean by rolling up multiples of 4?
Yeah, so they would sell a single, good question, they would sell a single and buy a 4-plex. And then they would sell the 4-plex and buy a 16-plex, bigger. Then they go high density commercial. So most of us in here don't need to worry about that today, but it gives you an example that now I know this. When I turned 45, I owned like 227, and when I turned 55, it was like 800 and some change, then it'll just keep going up. The cool thing, it's all about systems. If you just own these properties, we're not going to be managing them ourselves. We're going to have, Trevor's going to have 5 Trevors under him, and then he'll have 10 of them himself. And does that make sense? It's just learning the system, how to save your money with that. So in sharing that with you guys is the best way. You're here, you're learning, you're making your brain think. There's lots of different ways to invest in real estate. I like rental incomes because I make a decent amount of money. I could quit right now and make enough money to live on, but I would be really, really bored. I'd be so bored I'd probably get fit. See my wife's face? She's like, retire! Okay. So in sharing that, I appreciate you guys coming with this. So I wanted to say rolling up. We want to go bigger, be more efficient, buy right now. It's good for you guys to just think, learn from other people's experiences, and continue to make a lot of more money than you're making right now. Any general open Q&A for 5 minutes? Yes.
Do you have a overall pet? You like them, you don't like them, it depends on the property. What is your
Two pets or less, as long as our insurance won't be canceled, I'm okay.
Call me if you want a list of what's not insurable, and I'll be glad to give you for free.
Cool. Okay, good question. Let's do 3 more questions. So I'm not going to answer any questions after this. I'm going to lunch with my wife. No one else? Eric?
So back to your rolling up, at what point do you decide that it's time? Is it just 10 years? Is it
Yeah, good question. So what they said is once you had between 50 and 100 grand in equity, that they would roll up. So for example, I have 3 properties I'm going to probably sell this year. If I have, they're all singles, they all have 60 grand in equity. So if I sold those on 1031, 60 times 3 is 180,000, then I can easily buy a 12-plex, because there's my down payment, right? Makes sense? How much do I got to come up with out of my pocket? 0, because I have all this equity in my house. Okay? Chi?
Since we're talking about landlording, do you guys have a good recommended reading list?
A good recommended what?
Reading list.
Reading, like how do I read to be a better landlord?
No. I mean, do you have a good books?
So what books would I read to be a landlord?
Yeah.
Okay, I've never read a book about landlording, but I like Jeffrey Taylor. I did invest in his education. It's about $2,500.
Mr. Landlord.
Mr. Landlord, and I'm not a reader. I would rather go to a workshop every month. I just learn better that way. So Mr. Landlord was really, really good. You just Google MrLandlord.com. So that's what I like about landlording. And I think going to the RIA workshops and going to landlording classes, Utah Apartment Association, if you want to get good at that, I'd go to those meetings frequently also.
And Cullimores.
Kurt Colmore. Cool. Last thing. My next workshop is Saturday, June 7th. It's a bus tour for 6 hours. We'll visit 4 properties. You're going to see houses that are already finished, houses that are just getting started, houses that are in the middle. I'm going to call for sale by owner signs on the bus, rent signs. I'm going to stop and knock on people's doors. Who went on the bus tour last year? Only 3, 4, 5 people? Okay. You're going to see, like, when I'm driving around, this is literally what I do. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, I do this sometimes. Like, it's ingrained in my brain. It's ingrained in my brain. I'm sure you can make money this way. You can make money this way. You can make money this way. This is how you follow up with this. This is how you follow up with this. There's so much money to be made, we just don't know how to make it because we just get overwhelmed. So this is a great way. Here's what we're focusing on the bus tour, how to determine values. So our booklet was thick. You guys, thick booklet. We had all the comps on every property we looked at. We looked at 12 properties, 4 inside, 8 outside. It'll help you determine how, it's focusing on how to determine value and then also to determine repairs, because a lot of people don't know how to look at comps and don't know how to over-improve properties. So if you guys would like, it's obviously only 1 bus. We're not going to get a second bus. We sold out last year. We already have 30 people registered, so we have 32 spots left. So you can follow up with Trevor with that if you'd like. And we appreciate you guys coming and hope you guys make more money this month. And for the 3 people that we did not answer, their 3 objectives, if you could please email that to Trevor over this weekend with whatever the objective is, I will respond back on Tuesday with it, and I'll send it to everyone here just because it's interesting to see what people didn't learn from that. Okay? Thank you very much for coming. Hope you guys have a great weekend.